Are you tired of losing to Night March? Frustrated by every single Verbank post? Do you fear the words Target Whistle, then Lysandre, Shaymin for game? Then why not play Seismitoad? Hi, I'm Joe here from OmniPoke, and I'm actually going to get serious now. So, how's it going, guys? Today I'm talking about Seismitoad, Straight Toad. It's a standard deck, and it's probably the best answer we have to Night March, so that pretty much should already have your interests, because Night March is a very popular deck in Standard right now, and having one of the best matchups across the board against it is really, really good. So Toad has been around for ages. We all know what it does. Pretty much Quaking Punching for the majority of the game, and we're going to have a bunch of disruption items at our disposal as well. So because it doesn't let me full screen these cards anymore, I'm going to do a breakdown of Pokemon, then Trainers, then Energy, as per usual. So first of all, for those of you who don't know Seismitoad EX, here he is. 180 HP is a good starting point. With Quaking Punch, the main attack, we're going to spam for the majority of the game, pretty much. 30 damage, and your opponent can't play any item cards from his or her hand during their next turn. Pretty simple stuff. We're going to try and disrupt our opponent and make it so they can't play the majority of their deck. You know, most decks right now are relying on Compressor, VS Seeker, Trainer's Mail, Ultra Ball. Cards like these are no longer accessible to them. Pretty simple stuff, makes it hard for them to get set up. And we like to prey on decks that can't set up, because it just equates to easy prizes. They pretty much have a half-baked strategy because they can't get their stuff going, and it's going to make it easy for us to win the game pretty nicely. His second attack is actually relevant in this deck, because for once we are actually playing Water Energy. Grenade Hammer for 2 Water and a Colorless does 130 damage, and we place 30 damage to 2 of our own bench Pokemon. So this is actually a decent finishing attack, because oftentimes we're going to target Shaymin with Lysandre, just like most decks do pretty much, so that's an easy 2 prizes we can steal. And actually it's very important to note that this helps us get out of Shaymin loop. A lot of people will try to keep bouncing with Sky Return if they are being hit with Quaking Punch until they draw into their resources and then play down their hand accordingly. First of all, we have Headringer to stop this, but also we can start threatening Grenade Hammer by attaching Water Energy whilst we are continuing to use Quaking Punch, so that they have to continually bench more things, and it means we have Lysandre targets and can get around it that way. So Grenade Hammer is absolutely fantastic for stopping the Shaymin loop. It means we can also finish games by killing Shaymins quicker, and just having the option to Grenade Hammer can be nice at times. It helps us deal with stuff like Greninjas sometimes as well, so it's something to be aware of. The 30 damage to your own Pokemon is rarely relevant. You can see we have a full 4 Seismitoad because it's the only attacker in this deck. We've pretty much sacked off Giratina just to have more disruptive cards in here. Also, because a lot of Night Marchers are playing, you know, Xerosic and Enhanced Hammer most of the time, we really don't want to use Giratina at all, because it can actually lead us to losing the game. So we want to stick with Seismitoad, make it as hard for them to play their cards as possible, really. Giratina is disruptive because it stops DCE, but because they have stuff like Puzzle and Hammer and VS Seeker and Xerosic, we don't want to buy them a single turn of item lock after turn 1. So the whole idea is stick with Toad the whole game and then just have some backup dudes. So some of our backup dudes, we do have 2 Shaymin EX setting us up until we have 6 in hand. Pretty simple stuff. We can of course Sky Return as well with DCE, that's an option for us, but the majority of the time we want to be using Punch each turn. Now here is a huge tech card in the deck. It really is a help in a bunch of different situations. Absol, first of all, it's a non-EX, so there are certain points in certain games where your opponent has taken 4 prizes and you can't risk punching anymore, but you've still, you know, limited a lot of their energy and they're down to, you know, 1 or 2 energy left. Sometimes it's worth throwing Absol into the active position so that to actually take this 5th prize rather than a 6th prize, they have to commit energy, and then if you're able to remove that energy, then you can win. So Absol just being a non-EX is helpful in its own right. But his ability is the main reason we use him. Cursed Eyes, when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto the bench, you may move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another of his or her Pokemon. So this is absolutely huge for Jirachi promo, because Jirachi promo otherwise can be a threat for Seismitoad. The idea being, we've been putting Punch around the board. Most of the time we're going to Lysandre stuff up and just stall them in the active position and start hitting with Quaking Punch while they do nothing, probably set up things on the bench. So we can start using Cursed Eyes and use these Super Scoop Ups and AZ that we play to try and target Jirachis for certain. So if they do use one Stardust, right, by going into the Jirachi, getting rid of our Double Colorless, and they're immune, we can use Cursed Eyes to move 3 onto Jirachi. And if we're able to pick up Absol with a Super Scoop Up or an AZ, we can play Absol back down and use Cursed Eyes again to knock out the Jirachi, and then we're able to reattach DCE comfortably because we know it's not going to get removed. So that's fantastic for us. Dealing with Jirachi is a huge factor, but there's also just in random situations when other things that can cause you a bit of issue. Stuff like Zoroark Break can sometimes be an issue because they can Quaking Punch you back for a single energy, and they can do big numbers by stealing your own Grenade Hammer. Being able to deal with like stuff like Zorua that are stuck on the bench, even Combee as well. We know Vespiquen's a huge pain for Seismitoad. So if we're able to either like Lysandre up Combee is an option, but also this Absol's an option as well, so that we can place counters to deal with them on the bench whilst they're stuck with something in the active position. Because oftentimes stuff like Vespiquen, at the very least, they're just playing DCEs, or they're playing DC in a very low count of basic energy. So if you can stall something up in the active, you can keep using Absol to deal with their Combees before they become Vespiquens, and it's a lot easier for you to take the early prizes as you keep punching something that's safe in the active position, so that if they were to move, they'd have to attach an energy to move their active, and then they don't have the energy to attack with the Vespiquen the next turn. So Absol provides a lot of protection for Seismitoad, which is really, really good. And it's a fantastic one-of in here for sure. So the items, let's just go back to the overview. There's not too much I want to discuss really. Crushing Hammer, maxing it out, also one Enhanced Hammer. It's super important to remove energies whenever you can. 4 Super Scoop Up is huge. It's a healing card if we need to for Seismitoad, as well as spamming the Absol, which is very important. Spamming Shaymin as well in early turns potentially if you're digging for Double Colorless energy. That can be pretty nice. And just movement in general. If people are trying to Lysandre stall to try and break the Quaking Punch lock, it's important to keep an eye on how many Super Scoop Up you've gone through. 4 Trainer's Mail is a very nice consistency card. You can see we play a total of 45, so very good outs for Trainer's Mail. We do have 4 Ultra Ball as well, maxing this out of course for consistency, getting into Shaymin, Absol, whatever else we need. 4 VS Seeker is also very standard, and we have a bunch of different 1-ofs, 2-ofs, and even 3-ofs in this deck. We don't play any 4-of supporters, which is surprising. But let's get into it here. So let's just move on over. We have AZ, like I was saying, it's great for spamming with Absol. It's also really nice for spamming Shaymin, and even just picking them off the board so that your opponent can't target them as, Lysandre bait targets to sort of stall you, or Lysandre for easy KOs, like dealing with Shaymin. So AZ prevents those sorts of plays, which is nice for us. It can be used as a heal option for Toad, but basically we don't want to use this one because we have Cassius in here as well, and AZ gets rid of our energy and our tools, which we don't really like. Whereas this is why we play 1 Cassius in addition to the 1 AZ. So this is a second supporter-based guaranteed switching card. We don't play any actual switch or escape rope. We're just relying on the flippiness of Super Scoop Up. So I'm happy with having more than just 1 AZ, because if it gets prized, we can be in a bit of bother. So we have both AZ and Cassius to get us out of those awkward situations. And Cassius is probably the superior option if we're trying to heal Seismitoad, because we get to keep Fighting Fury Belt and whatever energy we had attached to Seismitoad. So that's all very good stuff. I really like Cassius for those sorts of things. And for the majority of the time, he does AZ's job for us. Only those situations where you're picking up Shaymin just to replay him, or picking up Absol just to replay him. Those are the times when Cassius is weaker than AZ. But I'm very happy with 2 of these supporters. I have, in the past, taken out Cassius just for an extra switch, like a physical 1 switch. But I think it's important to have access to these early, so then your VS Seekers become live for these guys later. So you don't have the headache of worrying about wasting coin flips on Super Scoop Up. I think it's just very important. Next up, we are playing 2 Judge. 2 Judge is a very important card in this deck. It's going to help us stop milling ourselves, because Seismitoad doing 40 a turn, obviously we don't have lasers in standard. 40 a turn is not a lot of damage a lot of the time. So sometimes we have to refresh the hand, but we don't want to use something like a Sycamore, so Judge can help us do that. But mainly we use him as the disruptive aspect for the opponent's side of the field. Namely matchups like Greninja and Garchomp, because these are stage 2 decks which can cause us a bit of issue if they get set up. So the idea is, turn 1, we're going to try and judge them so that they can't get that turn 2 water duplicates, or they can't get, you know, Candy Chomp or something turn 2, something aggressive like that these decks can do, because once they hit those situations, it can be very awkward for Seismitoad. So we want to judge, make sure that they can't get those things in the early turns, and hope then that Quaking Punch can disrupt them enough to just either us take a bunch of prizes early so that they are so far behind when they eventually do start overcoming us with their big stage 1 and 2 Pokemon, or that we just beat them in 2 or 3 turns because we judge them into trainers, they can't play those trainers, and it's pretty much over. So Judge is very nice for those sorts of decks. Otherwise, those two can be a bit iffy. Every now and then it's going to be useful in other situations as well. If you know your opponent is Sky Return looping as well, you can just get rid of those cards, so that's also a handy trick. We are playing 2 Lysandre. Lysandre's really nice. We're going to be trying to stall things all the time with this deck, basically, so Lysandre is phenomenal for those sorts of things. There's only a couple of matchups where Lysandre's really not useful. Only stuff like Yveltal, once they have actually developed Zoroark. But most of the time we have to go through the Zoroarks first anyway, because opponents like to use Zoroark Break as an attacker. So once we overcome Zoroark, Lysandre once again becomes live. 2, Misty's Determination. This is something you might be surprised to see. Misty's Determination is a very nice supporter in here. Let me remind you of what it does. You discard 1 from hand. If you do, you look at the top 8 cards of your deck and put 1 of them into the hand. So quite clearly, this is like a pseudo replacement for Sycamore in the deck. For when we need to dig for something very specific. Most of the time it's going to be Double Colorless energy. So if you are digging for DCE, Misty is actually better than Sycamore because we get to look at the top 8 cards rather than the top 7. And at the same time as doing that, we're discarding 1 card, whereas with Sycamore, it's the whole hand. So again, we're being very conscious about how many cards we're playing, how quickly we're going through our own deck. We want to have enough turns to take enough prizes to win the game before we mill ourselves out. Misty's going to be very handy at doing that for us. So she can also grab other things, hammers that are important, super scoop-ups can sometimes be important, Headringer, Fury Belt, all these things can be important. Remember, Misty is can be any single card, so it doesn't have to be an item or anything like that. It can sometimes just be another supporter, be like a weaker version of Skylar sometimes if we really need her to be. Because stuff like Totina Mirrors, it's only really important to hit Xerosic and Flare Grunt. We play a lot of them, but also Misty can get us into them early to make it nice for us there as well. And especially in Totina Mirrors, you don't mind discarding cards from hand because a lot of the time you're locked out, so you can discard useless things like Trainer's Mail, Ultra Ball quite happily with Misty and get into either DCEs of your own or Disruption supporters. So Misty is a very versatile card in this deck for a bunch of different matchups. Most of the time she's going to be used for DCE when it's too painful to Sycamore. So I like having the 2 count in here. It effectively gives us 5 Sycamore when we're digging turn 1 for DC as well, so that's also a nice consistency boost. Overall, I'm very happy with this card. It's a nice VS Seeker target as well a lot of the time when you think Sycamore's too risky or too painful. You know, sometimes you just draw badly and have 3 DC in hand and you can't use Sycamore, but you need to hit a hammer that turn or you need to super scoop up your active. Something like that, Misty can really help out for you. We're still playing 3 Sycamore. I think 4 is too much now that we play the Misty, so I'm happy with the split, to be honest. Still super powerful in most situations, though, so we still want to have a high count, and we're always happy to see it in the early turns, at least, when we're digging for Double Colorless energy. We are playing 3 Team Flare Grunt and 2 Xerosic, so the combination is going to help us get rid of a lot of energy. In combination with the hammers as well, we should be able to run Night March out of all of their DCE quite easily a lot of the time. Even stuff like Vespiquen, even though they do use Baby Yveltal a lot of the time, they normally play 4 basic dark, 4 to 5 basic dark I would say is a maximum. So 3 Flare Grunt, 4 Crushing Hammer, getting rid of those basic dark energy, at least from their active Yveltal, means then that we can use the Absol tricks to deal with stuff like Combee, Zorua, what other Pokemon that they play, even Jirachi Promo, if they're benching these cards at least. So we're able to Flare Grunt the active, not really mind if they reattach Dark Energies to the Yveltal, because we're going to use Absol to keep the Yveltal active, because oftentimes they play a very low count of switching cards. So Flare Grunt at a high count is important. Also 2 Xerosic rather than just 1, because we're trying to target tools at the same time often, getting rid of Fury Belt so it's easier to knock stuff out, also so that we can replace them with Headringers if they are EX Pokemon, so that's very handy to us as well. Xerosic also helps deal with Night Marchers a bit quicker. A Pumpkaboo with 100 HP is a lot more difficult to kill than one with 60, so get rid of their Fury Belts. Xerosic is very handy there. We are playing 3 Rough-Seas. Rough-Seas is going to really help out against Trevenant. Seismitoad Giratina is often seen as unfavourable against Trevor because oftentimes they're playing different stadiums to Rough-Seas. So by us having a 3 count of Rough-Seas, we can try and get rid of their D-Valleys so that it's harder for them. They need more energy to actually keep attacking for a start, which can already help us. But also having 3 Rough-Seas means that there are times when we can win the Stadium War. Oftentimes Trevor plays 3 of its own, so if we are more careful with our Rough-Seas, oftentimes because they need to attack, they will be playing D-Valley before we will. Rough-Seas can be put into play and be the last stadium that's in play, and if that's the case, you know, Silent Fear is very useless, Tree Slam is very useless at the same time, only doing like 30 a turn, so very important that we have the Rough-Seas for that matchup. It's also going to help out in Sky Returns. A lot of the time, like I was saying, people will just bounce Shaymins while they're waiting to draw into good things that actually like impacts the board because they're trainer locked, they can't draw many cards, so in the meantime, let's just bounce with Shaymin, I guess. So this makes the damage irrelevant, basically, because we can heal off the 30 that they're doing with Shaymin, so that's also a very handy thing to stop those tricks really being a pain for us. Again, it's something that Toadina players often go for as well, because there'll be points in games where they're holding DCE, but they're pretty much aware that you have a disruption card like Flare Grunt or Xerosic, so they'll just be using Shaymin, going into something with a Float Stone, trying to play down Shaymin, doing all that stuff. But Toadina normally plays 1 to 2 Stadium, and they're normally the Aqua base, right? Or sometimes Silent Lab if they're feeling cool. So having the 3 Rough-Seas means that we can overcome their stadiums and heal off what we're getting damaged by with Shaymin. There's a bunch of different situations as well when things are two-shotting us, like Y-Cyclone, stuff like that, we can heal off. And especially with the extended HP of fighting Fury Belt, which I'll get on to next, we can easily stay out of range of 2 shots even a lot of the time thanks to Rough-Seas healing us. So it's a fantastic card to have in here. Really, really nice. Versatile and good in many situations. Next up, 3 fighting Fury Belt. It's the main reason why we're so good against Night March now. The ECC list that actually came second, it played 2 Assault Vest, and the Assault Vest was for Night March. Now we have the effective HP of an Assault Vest in fighting Fury Belt, but we also have 10 extra damage, so it's a clear inclusion in here, in my opinion. I think it's a really, really nice card that we have for Seismitoad to abuse, and if we're using Quaking Punch, no one else can abuse it as well, so we get full value. It makes Toad very difficult to knock out. It makes these Cassius and these Super Scoop Ups way more powerful because oftentimes pretty much nothing can one-hit Seismitoad unless it's something hitting for weakness. Mainly Vespiquen is probably the biggest thing that springs to mind, so Fury Belt is going to be amazing for those sorts of plays. We do have the 2 Headringer. Like I said at the start, it's good for stopping Shaymin Loop, and just in general, it's an extra energy people need to attack. We're all about getting rid of energy, so it's going to make it very awkward for anyone to put damage on us. It's also fantastic in mirrors as well. Getting the first Headringer, the initial Headringer on Toad, can be annoying. Of course, if you do it before you use Quaking Punch, they can use their Super Scoop Ups and stuff like that. But if you've done it on the turn that you Quaking Punch, i.e. it's turn 2, they miss their own tool, or even if you have Xerosic plus Headringer plus Quaking Punch, that's a very powerful thing to do because then they can't response Quaking Punch you unless they specifically have AZ in hand. Many don't play Cassius like I do because I'm aware of mirror matches, and I think it's important to have 2 supporter-based versions of picking up stuff. So yeah, Headringer is really nice for mirror and pretty much anything that plays EXs, so there we go. At the very least, shove it on a Shaymin, Lysandre them up, it's a perfect target there, because even spending 1 energy is very painful for decks when we're denying so many in here, so I think it's a very nice inclusion, of course. And then a total of 8 energy is actually very rare for Seismitoad, as you can see, 4 of each. So having these basics means that we can actually play these on the first turn and be fairly carefree about it, because most decks other than other Toad variants are not playing energy denial, at least for basic energy. So that's very nice. It means that we're less pressurized on having DCE, especially if we do go first, because then we just need to hit 2 of our water energy instead, which protects DCE for later turns. Maybe if we need to retreat out of something like Shaymin, Absol, also the water energies are really helpful there, without having to waste a double colorless to do so. So it acts as, you know, if we're missing super scoop ups, if we don't have these cards, we have a lot of outs already. But the water energy can be additional outs to move Shaymin and Absol, so Lysandre trying to get out of Quaking Punch lock is really kind of futile against us, so it's absolutely fantastic for that. And of course they are water energy, so that we can use Grenade Hammer. It's not relevant enough for us to play Dark Energy for Absol, because Mat Claw is not a very good attack in comparison to what Grenade Hammer can bring us, so that's very awesome. So that is the deck, guys. A couple of things that I'd like to talk about maybe adding into here. Delinquent is one card I'd consider. It's been in and out of this deck. Again, it's one of these situations where you really don't have much to do in certain turns, so just firing off Delinquents, trying to disrupt your opponent's hand a bit more can be helpful. A lot of the time I find that they're just discarding items anyway, so I often think it's not very strong in here. But again, I go back to stuff like Greninja and stuff like Garchomp, where they're holding evolution pieces, and it's really important to try and access those cards. So Delinquent can sometimes do that. If we've gone Judge into Delinquent, it can be a very nice combo for us to really stop them doing anything. But I think it's kind of techie. You're going to miss it a lot as a one-of. I don't think it's important enough to play. But it's one you can throw around with if you're expecting a lot of Greninja, because that can cause you a bit of issue. So other cards, Acrobite can be a card that you can play. Increasing the enhanced hammer count is an option for you. Different stadiums like Aqua Base is an option. It's what Totina uses for extra Lysandre stall potential. I have already given the case for Rough Seas, so if you want to go to a 2-1 split maybe, or a 1-2 split the other way around with more Aqua Base than Rough Seas, you can do if you're not expecting Trevenant. I think it's not the worst stadium that you could play. And also the final issue is Puzzle. There aren't any Puzzle of Time in this deck. Why not? Why not just play 4 DC, 4 Puzzle? Well, you're way weaker in the Mirror. You're way weaker in Vespi Vile, which is already a pretty vile matchup. And you're way weaker in Trevenant matchups. So that's why I'm not playing Puzzle in here. Also, a lot of the time, it just doesn't work out for you. Your hands aren't very nice. There's already a lot of clunky things in the hand that get stuck there, like Crushing Hammers if they're not playing energy. All of these disruption supporter cards like Xerosic and Flare Grunt, they get stuck here quite often. So we don't have the kind of draw engine that Night March has, where they can Shaymin for 5 most times. Normally our Shaymin is for 2 or 3 cards, and we're just trying to hope. So Puzzle is another card that can be janky in the hand, and oftentimes you don't get the nice effect of 2-in-1 unless you're very fortunate, or you've been draw passing quite a few turns, or basically draw punch, draw punch, draw punch, and then eventually you'll get double Puzzle and you're quite happy. But oftentimes I don't think it's really worth it, although it could be an avenue you choose to go down. Maybe trim down on some supporters to do so. If you're not a fan of the Misty, go down to 1. The Judge could potentially go down to a 1 as well. Cassius AZ, I do really like both of them. Maybe the Trainer's Mail can get cut by 1, make room for some puzzles, maybe cut the water energy. That's 1 water energy. So 1 water, 1 Misty, 1 Mail, 1 Judge. Those could be cut for 4 puzzle. See how it goes for you. I'm personally not a fan of it, but it could be just playstyle based. It could be a really nice thing. It's actually very nice for mirror matches as well, because we have so many disruption cards like Flare Grunt and Xerosic that we will get rid of all their double colorless. So there'll be a point when the puzzles do become live, and when they are live, you can get back your DCE and you should be able to overcome your opponents. So puzzle could be an option for you for a bunch of different reasons. It gives us more Crushing Hammers, more Super Scoop Ups. These are really powerful cards. So puzzle could get you those back if need be as well. So puzzle's a potential option. I just don't like the practicality of it. I really like the idea, but in terms of when I've actually done test hands, play testing with this deck, it's been very cute when I can get the puzzles going, but it's not very often, like in Night March, where it's pretty much you're guaranteed to hit at least 2 puzzle in Night March pretty much, because you have stuff like Teammates, you have just such a more powerful draw engine, you have so many more insta-play cards than Toad does. because these are like technically insta-play, but a lot of the time they're not, because your opponent's choosing not to play energy, or you've already got rid of all of their energy. So there's many times when you have cards that are janky in the hand, unlike Night March. So there we go, that is the deck. Very good, and we will get into a battle now, and hopefully no one scoops to us, because they see a Toad and they pretty much go running. That's the way it goes normally. So let's jump into the ladder now. Let me know what you guys thought about the intro as well. I thought I'd spice it up, be a little bit different. So please leave a like if you did, and maybe I'll do some more in the future. Basically, because everyone's going mad about Night March right now, I thought I'd address the situation and give you guys a reason to watch this video, I guess. So we've found a matchup against Kamau, who's playing a water and colourless deck, so probably Greninja. If it is Greninja, we're going to look to hit Judge quite early. Hopefully this loads in a moment's time. My internet is fine, so normally PTCGO just takes a little while longer to load since the update. Hopefully we'll get there very shortly. And yes, there we go. So we are calling the flip. We get to go first, so we will indeed take that option. And let's have a look at our hand here. Shuffling up, we start Seismitoad, which is really nice. It's another reason why we have a full 4 and so few other basics, is because we want to start Seismitoad as often as possible. We are indeed looking at a Greninja deck, and yeah, that can be an issue for this deck for sure, because our output is kind of weak. We're not playing Hex in this deck. We're trying to rely solely on Quaking Punch pretty much, so we need to use Judge to try and stop our opponent getting the opening water duplicates. Of course, he could just hit the nuts off Judge anyway, but that's something we can't really play around. So this is one of our harder matchups. We have been given a lot of mulligans, which is going to help us get into some stuff, including an energy, which is nice to play turn 1. So I didn't see them have any Rough Seas, so I'm not going to play it down. I think it's just going to be an attached pass here. Just super awkward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So even if I play these 2 cards down, play down 1 Shaymin, I can still only then Shaymin for 1. So it's just going to be an attached pass. Cross our fingers, maybe we could get a Judge play next turn. Ugh, do I want to play this Rough Seas now? Gets out of the hand if I want to use a Shaymin next turn. Actually, I could Shaymin Cassius Shaymin. It means I'm not judging unless I get it specifically off the next 1 card. It might be something that I go for though, because Judge is so important. So we're going to Shaymin. And we're going to Shaymin. Play a Super Scoop up. Get Tails. So now I can Fury Belt. And go for Cassius, I think. Because it's another good top deck for us. Do I want to keep the one with Fury Belt is the question, because Fury Belt is a bad top deck for us. I just get rid of this one, I think. 1 good top deck, 0 bad is better than 1 and 1. So let's go for that. I could have played the belt first and then got an extra card from Shaymin. That was probably an error, but we'll see how our opponent plays around it. We see a Lysandre. So no Wally is good. They didn't go for Bubble, which is weird. They had the option to. So let's use Crushing Hammer to get the heads. We don't have Quaking Punch this turn, which is really awkward for us. We do have Cassius though. So again, we can move the Shaymin out the way. And we'll pass it over. Very bad start for us. You see Trainer's Mail for Xerosic. Evolves into Octillery. That's going to be annoying for our judge plays. We see a Xerosic on the Fury Belt, and Abyss Hand for 2. Weird that he chose to use Xerosic. He could have not taken it with Mail and still got the extra 2 cards. So, here's a Trainer Spell of our own. And just Flare Grunt. This is really weak. Really weak from us. We really should be getting into other supporters and stuff here. This is a really bad showcase of the deck. Might have to do a second battle after this just to redeem itself. I think I misplayed the Cassius though. If I look back at that, I'm going to cringe because I think I could have got an extra card. So that's kind of bad. I always play badly when I talk to you guys anyway. I promise I focus more in game. But when you're trying to be entertaining at the same time, stuff happens. Our opponent does decide to get rid of some supporters, which is weird, including the Wally. So he's definitely looking for energy plus Frogadier this turn. We see another Froakie. We do see a water, so at least a bubble. If we do see that water duplicates, it may be awkward, but just the bubble is actually a good thing for us, even though paralysis is awkward. Oh great, DC off our next card. Even though paralysis is kind of frustrating, we didn't see the clones come in, so that's something for us. A lot of support has gone from our opponent early on, but we just have to pass here. Not going to play the DC down just yet because he could always VS Seeker Xerosic, and that would make me sad. I want to get the value from this DC. So finally we see Dive Ball into Frogadier. It's likely that he has another energy, and this is where the game gets kind of awkward for us, especially because we played down Rough Seas. I think we insta-lose now, so it might be a case that I have to leave the game and start again. Let's see if he does have the water or if he has to dig with Abyss Hand. So we see a Compressor just to get rid of one Ultra Ball. Oh, then we see Wally. Wow. Is he going straight to Greninja? No, he gets another Frogadier out. And then probably he's trying to get more cards. He's trying to find a water energy here. And if there's a whiff, there is still some hope for us here. There's another Dive Ball. We see another Froakie coming out. Now our win condition is going to be Lysandre Octillery. That's our win condition at this point. We're just going to stall so that he can't use anything but the XY Greninja snipes. That's our win condition at this point. But at the moment it's looking very unlikely that we're going to get into any of those because our hand is pretty weak. So we can start the Quaking Punch at least this turn. That's an important thing. Rusty's is down on our side, so he can heal, but so can we when we start getting hit with these attacks. And hopefully we can get out of this slump a little bit. We see double Greninja. We see more Octillery shenanigans. There's the heal. So because our opponent's got a lower deck size than us, the only out for us to win is not going to be via damage, it's going to be via deck out. We see a Birch get Tails. We see the evolution into Frogadier. This is all manually evolving as well. This is pretty rare for Greninja to actually do this. We do see the Moonlight Slash for the extra 20 damage. And we hit Xerosic, which can only get rid of our own tool, so we'll choose not to do that, I think. And just go for Quaking Punch. There's an option we could lose here. We have 170 HP left. You can do 80, 110, 170 with one break. So he needs a break and an energy in this hand, and he actually has game. Oh no, he needs 2 energy because he needs to use that Shuriken as well. Doesn't look like he has it, which is comforting. We do see the Water Shuriken though. Up to 80. If he has break and one more energy in there, we could actually lose. Oh boy, Sycamore. 1 break in discard, 3 water discarded, plus 1 regular in play already. Here's another XY Greninja. I don't think that affects the maths in terms of us losing the game. Oh, it does. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So, a 1 turn clock to get out of this now. And no. So, we lose to Greninja because our opening hand was really awkward. As you can see, all of those cards that we had were just not insta-play. It's kind of the point I was making about Puzzle of Time. So let's jump into another game. That was really awkward. We really didn't get into that game at all. So despite having 3 mulligan draws, we didn't draw into any of our DCE, Misty, Sycamore, Male, Ultra Ball. Yeah, I think those were the main outs that we needed to hit. Or Judge. Even Judge would have been helpful. So pretty unfortunate, I think. Nothing more than that. So our opponent is now playing a metal deck, and something I forgot to mention about water energy means we can actually damage Aegislashes, and if it's a straight metal deck, we might have to go down that route this game. So let's see what our opponent is playing. We will shuffle up. We have a mulligan. You do that a lot with this deck. We only play 7 basic Pokemon. But look how nice that hand would have been with a Pokemon in there. Compared to our last hand, at least. Okay, we see Seismitoad. We see DCE. We're very happy. And we see a Beldum. So it's probably a newer player playing Metagross. So this should be kind of easy. Not to be harsh. Oh, Robo Sub. I have no idea what this deck is. We're just gonna run through this and have a third game, I think. Hopefully find someone competitive. That is the issue with PTCGO games. I've been thinking about just not doing battles at the end of games because you get people like this. No offense to them, I'm sure they're starting to learn the game, and it's a learning process for them to play against stuff like Seismitoad. But in terms of, for you guys who are all clearly very experienced, strong players, you don't really want to see me Quaking Punching a Beldum for 3 turns and winning. Like, it's not very entertaining. So, we'll stick with this game. We'll keep punching away while this Metang gets set up. And we'll find another opponent shortly. So, we see Xerosic. Wow. Uh-oh. Underestimating the opponent. Oh, top deck of DC instead. Cool. Don't need to play anything else from hand, so we just simply won't. I haven't used anything other than the DCE. Okay. So, I can't remember the HP of Metagross. I believe it's 140. So if he is able to evolve, that could be kind of awkward for us. Here is indeed Metagross. Oh, it's 150. Machine Gun Stomp does 20 plus 10 more for each card in your hand. So at the moment he's not doing a lot, but he has got Sycamore in hand, so pretty strong. I should say. Guard Press does 80 and reduces damage done by 20 as well. Registeel could be an issue because it can get rid of special energy for us. And we do get hit for 80 with that Machine Gun Stomp. So we're going to Rough Seas, and we're going to Judge to lower our opponent's hand size. For sure here. We don't need anything other than Quaking Punch here, so we're kind of happy with this. I can start committing Water Energy. I don't think I really need to, unless we're going to get hit with another thing like Xerosic. I think because we're going to be Sycamoring next turn, almost guaranteed, we may as well play it in case we draw into another energy. And it does give us the option. So the Metagross up to 90. The Fury Belt that we didn't hit was not relevant in terms of the maths. So that's fine. We start seeing energy onto Registeel, so it's going to be important for us to start hitting Crushing Hammers here. We do just see that Machine Gun Stomp for 60 this turn. We are kind of weak. Top decking VS Seeker is pretty horrible, but we need to hit a lot of stuff here. So we will just choose to Sycamore here. We do hit Fury Belt, which is important for our survival. And we're going to try and hit Crushing Hammer off of this Trainer's Mail, which we do. So that's pretty strong. Hopefully we can hit it, because we want to try and deny this Registeel from ever attacking. I could also put it on, get rid of it on the active, because this Metagross isn't going to retreat. Okay, let's get rid of the Metagross, try and buy ourselves some more heals and some more turns. Because we do have a few nice supporters in hand that we can use in the following few turns. The Metagross now 20 HP away from death. She has to recommit energy if she wishes to attack us this turn. If not, we can get a nice little heal going. There is a Flare Grunt, which is going to get rid of a second Double Colorless of ours, which is very awkward. Let's see what else they can come up with. Another Metal Energy onto the Metagross, and again we get attacked for 50 damage, putting us up to 90 HP left. 60 damage. No, sorry, 120 now that we've healed. And we have a decision. It's again a painful Sycamore, so it's times like this where you want to use Misties. We need to hit either a Water Energy or a Double Colorless. We'd way prefer to get a Water, because this gets rid of energy rather than Double Colorless. So we're definitely going Misty here. We'll get rid of a Lysandre. And let's see what we hit. We do hit Water Energy. That's exactly what we need. Our HP is at 120. This cannot hit 120. So we should be fine just to take the Water, rather than any other basic Pokemon. So we can just Quaking Punch, taking the first prize of the game. This has actually caused us a lot more issue than it should do. But we're taking the first prize here. And we get a Xerosic. So in comes the robot. So apparently our opponent doesn't have the DC already in hand. There's just an attachment of a basic energy instead. A second Registeel hits the bench. And now that they've done that, I can just Lysandre this up and have a lot of turns. So I'm pretty happy with that, because it means we can start healing off this Toad for sure. So this is where the Lysandre comes into play. And start using Punch. So because of that benched Registeel, I feel a lot more comfortable. Probably an error from our opponent, because otherwise this would put a lot of pressure on us. Whereas even energy in the active position is less threatening, because we have Flare Grunt that we haven't hit yet, but once we start hitting those things, we can start preventing our opponent from doing things here. So again, I feel like it's a turn where we want to use Misty. Via Seeker Misty, get rid of Sycamore, dig for another Hammer, and then we also have Shaymin plays. Rather than get rid of Sycamore, because I'm pretty certain they're playing Double Colorless Energy, so these Xerosics are going to be helpful. I could keep one Sycamore just in case for following turns. I think that's actually fine. Even though we know they're playing Double Colorless Energy, keeping one is fine. So we miss pretty much a lot of important things, but we do hit a Seismitoad to make us a bit safer. If it's really important enough, I could go for Trainer's Mail here. Seeing as though our opponent went into the robot last turn, probably means that they top-decked that Metal Energy. Otherwise they would have sent up the Registeel and tried to attack us with it. So Trainer's Mail into a Hammer might not be bad here. It could even be for Ultra Ball to lower the hand size for Shaymin. But here is a Crushing Hammer. We will play Crushing Hammer. Does get a Tails, but we can use Shaymin now for 3 cards. We hit Flare Grunt for following turn, so that's pretty handy. I think at this point I can stop digging, because trying to use Super Scoop Ups here for only 1 or 2 cards is not really value, so we'll go for Quaking Punch here. Continuing to ask questions of our opponent. Now the Fury Belt is definitely relevant in terms of numbers. So we do just see the pass from our opponent. We can Rough Seize once again. You can play down Seismitoad. Not too much need for it though. I can assume, again we have to assume we're getting hit with this attack next turn. And it's super awkward for us, but we're going to try and just spam Flare Grunt, right? So, if we're using Flare Grunt, then we need to dig for DCE this turn. So it's going to be a Misty play. Again, we're looking just for energy. Do hit water. And I think this is going on the active. So that we're fairly safe if he does use Forbidden Iron Hammer. And if he doesn't, God, sorry, I keep saying he. We could even Grenade Hammer if we think it's value enough. But for now we can use Quaking Punch. Happy not benching anything else. Our hand is fine. Let's see what our opponent's going to do. That should indicate what our opponent's hand is, depending on which one she goes into here. We do see the robot, so I imagine there's no basic energy in their hand, or DCE either. So they're trying to buy themselves an extra top deck here, and we just see a scoop. So there we go. It was actually a lot more difficult than I first thought because of those Reggie steals. But eventually we're able to take the win, and we'll have one more game with Toad. Hopefully we find something more standard that isn't Greninja. We got a free pack as well. Nice. I'm actually close to a Jirachi. Hooray. I think I already have a few online, but still. So we have Yasha22, and I saw a lot of basic energy symbols in the opening slide, so could be interesting. The game is just loading for our opponent. PTCGO today was released on Android, which is pretty cool, on your tablets. So that's very nice. If you want to play on tablets on the go, it can be pretty handy. I'm of course on the desktop. So we win the coin flip. We will choose to go first, and we'll shuffle up. We again start Toad DCE. Oh, it's just the dream. And let's see what we're up against here. Night March. That's pretty good. Pretty good for us. Okay. If we attach pass, we could lose to a crazy turn 1. If we choose not to, we get rid of 2 water energy. The disruption cards that Night March plays probably isn't enough to get rid of our energy overall. So I feel like it's more comfortable to get a Fury Belt or a basic Pokemon for our bench here. We do hit a Seismitoad. We don't hit a basic Pokemon, but I think it's important enough to keep Absol in this matchup to not continue to dig and just pass it here, rather than dig for a Shaymin for 3 cards off of a setup looking for Fighting Fury Belt. We see Unknown, so oh wow, it's a Vespiquen build. It's going to make it a lot harder for us. But so I'm glad definitely glad we kept Absol, because it's going to be very important to do that for sure. So the right way to play Night March is actually with a 1-1 or 2-2 Vespiquen line. So this is the thing that causes Seismitoad issue. If it's a straight Night March, which we see a lot of, it's a pretty much a breeze. But you can see they can still explode turn 1. And our opponent's already got double Battle Compressor, which is really bad for us because it means straight away that Vespiquen can be one-hitting our Seismitoad EXs once he uses this Unknown, or if we kill the Joltik, because 70 plus 20 is 90, which is of course times 2 due to weakness. So either we need to get more HP with our Fighting Fury Belt, or this Vespiquen is going to run straight through us like butter, which is kind of awkward. So what we're going to try and do is use Lysandre targets and Absol to kill the Combies while we're nice and safe, punching something like a Shaymin. That would be the ideal. So we'll see how that plan can be brought into effect here. We do see a double colorless onto Joltik. So far it's only 120. Yeah. Not too bad. So because we are going to be using Quaking Punch, all of these hammers are pretty dead. As is the AZ. So we'll get rid of those. We'll attach a water here. And we'll go for a Shaymin. We do hit a Judge, which is kind of cool. So I'll play the Rough Seas down, get the heal going, and I think I am judging here to try and make it difficult for them to actually have the Vespi plus DC in hand. It's probably our best line. I could go for a Super Scoop Up now, but it's also really nice to keep them for Absol. Although Super Scoop Up can buy us Fury Belt. Fury Belt pushes us to more HP, but we still die to the Vespi nonetheless. What else could I dig for here? No, I think I'd rather Judge now and have better odds, because Super Scoop Up's good if we have a pretty much dead Judge. So let's go for this Judge. Just DCE Flare Grunt, Super Scoop Up. So see, it's good that we kept SSU, because it can be nice for Shaymin. For now, it's going to be just Quaking Punch and see how well they did out of the Judge. Hopefully we don't see a Vespiquen plus DCE here. That would make me very sad. Here is their only basic Pokemon, the Combee. Looks like our opponent did prize one Lampent because their second Battle Compressor got rid of 2 Pumpkaboo and a Joltik, and it looked like the Judge just pretty much killed them. So that was nice. We were able to beat Night March in like 2 turns. So shows you how nice the matchup can be with the combination of Punch, Judge, and all the other disruption cards we have. It's actually not super important to get rid of all their energy, because just punching will sometimes do that anyway. So you can actually get rid of stuff like hammers, like I was doing, because most of the time you're going to draw back into Flare Grunt and Xerosic anyway, and that's only in situations where punch doesn't already kill them. So if they are using Pumpkaboo or something like Vespiquen as well. So as long as they're not using Joltik, you can just... No, if they are using Joltik, you don't even need to get rid of the discard cards. No, you don't even need to use the discard cards, so you can get rid of them. There you go. Getting a little bit confused, but that was the deck. Straight Toad is very good. I was drawing very janky with it. Definitely the first game was awful in terms of our draw. The only supporter we saw was Cassius, and the rest of the cards were just loads of hammers and stuff in a row. The deck can do that. I'm not going to hide the fact. Clearly you saw it in person, so that was kind of awkward. But also just locking down your opponent is super good. So hope you all enjoyed, guys. It's been Joe from OmniPoke, and I'll see you guys next time. Have fun beating Night March.